They were running out of sky. Virel still looked beautiful from the ground. Blue oceans, pale continents, cloud bands catching starlight, but the defense dome above it flickered like a dying eyelid. In orbit, the shield lattice had become a quilt of wounds. Every dark patch let something through. Lysa Thren felt the bombardment through the bunker's bones. The tremor came first, then the distant thud, softened only by a kilometer of rock. Grid at 42%, a technician rasped beside her. Sector 7 is offline. 9 is. Tell me what's holding, Director Pell snapped, talons clicking on the holoplinth. What's holding right now? The council chamber formed a ring of exhausted faces. Ministers with soot on their sleeves, admirals with torn collars, med liaisons blinking through red eyes. Above them, holo views of the planet rotated. Red rings marked impact sites. A timer counted down to the next projected strike. Outside the shield, the Sable Dominion waited like a patient blade. Their ships hung in ritual geometry around the night side, black hulls swallowing starlight. At the center sat an executor-class flagship, too large to feel real. Arch-Executor Kelesor Vant had offered no negotiation, only a single broadcast. Submit. Be remade. Admiral Senk leaned forward. We can punch a corridor. Concentrate interceptors, hit their screening wing, by a window. You'll throw pilots into a furnace, Pell said. They'll die anyway, Senk shot back. At least they'll choose how. Rava, the medical liaison, raised a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. Hospitals are full. We've moved triage underground. We're out of sealant. We're rationing pain suppressants. Pell's gaze flicked to the empty seats along the ring, leaders already gone. Where is the Concordat task force? He asked, though he knew. A comm officer opened the channel. An envoy appeared, pale and composed in neutral grey. Director Pell, the envoy said. We sympathize. Senk made a sound like he'd bitten metal. The council has reviewed your petition, the envoy continued. Intervention is constrained. Article 12 prohibits escalation beyond border protocols. The Sable Dominion has filed a claim of territorial correction. Until a tribunal. Tribunal? Rava whispered. They are striking population centers. We urge compliance to minimize casualties, the envoy said. Sign the annexation terms. Lives can be spared. Pell's feathers bristled. You are advising surrender. I am advising survival, the envoy replied, and ended the call. The next impact arrived like punctuation. The lights dipped. Dust sifted from the ceiling seams. Lysa kept her hands under the table so no one could see them shaking. She wasn't supposed to be in the council ring. She was archival salvage, old schematics, forgotten infrastructure, quiet work. She'd been dragged down here because someone remembered the oldest systems were sometimes the stubbornest. Senk stood, anger barely contained. Then we stop asking. If no one will help, we help ourselves. With what? Pell asked. Our shipyards are burning. Rava swallowed. My sister's clinic is gone. Silence settled, heavy and intimate. Pell's eyes found Lysa. Engineer Thren. You handle disaster archives. Do we have anything that can call aid beyond their bureaucracy? Anything that doesn't need a vote? Lysa's throat tightened. She saw her home district on the holo, ringed in red. She saw the timer. She thought of the vault beneath the spire. Sealed crates labeled in languages no one used anymore. There is a relic, she said. Pre-Concordat. A universal relief beacon. It broadcasts on legacy frequencies. It was meant to reach anyone, anywhere. Senk scoffed. We've been calling for help for 3 cycles. This is older than registries, Lysa insisted. It bypasses them. I can't promise it works, but it's the only thing left that can shout without permission. Pell didn't hesitate. Take her. They moved through corridors lit by emergency strips. The stone around them thrummed with distant violence. At the repository vault, Lysa keyed her clearance and prayed the system still recognized her name. The seals hissed open. Rows of shelving rose like silent witnesses. Lysa went straight to the third aisle, bottom rack, relief universal. The lock resisted, then yielded. Inside lay a device like a flattened sphere, dull alloy wrapped in copper filaments. Its surface held concentric scripts, old Varelian, trade glyphs, and one block of angular characters she couldn't read. A tiny panel blinked. Her escort shifted. "You're sure?" "No," Lysa said, and pressed her palm to the activation plate. The beacon stung, drawing a thin line of blood. Symbols flared, crawling into alignment. A tone rose, quiet, insistent, vibrating through her teeth. The filaments brightened, dimmed, brightened again as the device hunted for a language the void would answer. Calibration. 68%. 93%. 100%. Above, another strike. The bunker light sagged. Dust fell like grey snow. The tone tightened into a needle. The beacon pulsed once, then released its message with the calm certainty of a machine fulfilling its last directive. Humanitarian assistance requested. Immediate relief required. Lysa stared at the translated line, stunned by the softness of the words compared to the violence outside. For 10 heartbeats, nothing happened. The filaments settled into a steady glow. Her escort exhaled, shoulders dropping as if the air had finally won. Then the device chimed. Incoming response. Routing. The speaker crackled. A voice arrived, human accented, clipped, astonishingly steady beneath the hiss of ancient static. "This is Soul Rescue Command," it said. "We received your distress. Confirm, hostile action ongoing." Lysa's mouth went dry. "Yes," she managed. "Civilians are trapped. The shield is failing." "Understood," the voice replied. "No pity, no panic. Keep this channel open. Mark evacuation zones if you can. Help is incoming." And, Lysa tried, desperate. "Who are you sending?" A pause, brief as a breath. "Rescue assets," the voice said. "Enough." The line went quiet. Lysa looked at the glowing beacon, at the guards staring like they'd seen a miracle and didn't know whether to trust it. Above them, Virel still burned. The Dominion still hung in orbit. But somewhere impossibly far away, someone had heard them. And the way that voice had said enough made Lysa's blood run colder than fear. It sounded like a promise today. Commander Mara Cade hated the word unprecedented. It was always spoken by people far from the smoke. The Sol Relay Center sat under Antarctic ice, a cathedral of glassy servers and quiet alarms. Mara stood in its heart with a mug of bitter coffee cooling in her hand while the operations wall painted a foreign star system in pale blue. A tiny icon blinked at the edge of the map. Distress, Legacy Band. "Who's on the line?" she asked. Lieutenant Imoni Cho didn't look up from her console. Source tag reads Varelian. Translation layer says humanitarian assistance. Old protocol, pre-union. Humanitarian, Mara repeated, and the room's mood shifted as if someone had opened a door to winter. Casualty estimate. Unknown. But the beacon flagged hostile action ongoing. Cho nodded toward the telemetry feed. External sensors confirm weapons-grade emissions. Someone's shelling them. Across the pit, a junior analyst lifted a hand. It might be a trap. These channels are dusty. Pirates spoof them." Mara set her mug down with care. "Does the data look spoofed?" The analyst hesitated. "No, Then it's not a trap. It's a call for help." She tapped her comm implant. "Patch me to Rescue Fleet Command." The air filled with the soft click of links forming. A face appeared on Mara's tablet, Rear Admiral Okoye, hair cropped tight, eyes already tired. "Cade," Okoye said. "You woke me with a legacy beacon." "I didn't. Someone dying did." Mara turned so he could see the tactical overlay. Virel. Outer Concordat Fringe. Under active bombardment. Okoye's gaze sharpened. "That's beyond our treaty lanes." "They didn't call the treaty," Mara said. "They called us." The Admiral exhaled slowly. "You know the Council will scream. They can scream into the void. This is rescue protocol." Okoye studied her for a heartbeat, then nodded. Rescue protocol it is. Assemble your package. Mara's fingers flew across the holo, pulling assets like pieces from a board. We need 3 hospital barges, 2 evac haulers, 4 shield tenders, and a drone cloud big enough to stitch atmosphere. Cho glanced up. That's the standard relief suite. Mara added icons that were not standard. And a strike screen. The pit went quiet. Cho's eyebrows rose. Guns on a charity run. Mara didn't soften her voice. If someone is shooting the charity, we bring a fire extinguisher and a bat. Okoye's image flickered as he leaned closer. Define strike screen. 2 assault carriers, Mara said. Escort destroyers. Boarding marines. ECM cutters. We keep the med ships alive long enough to do their jobs. Okoye's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. You're taking the Mercer class. Yes. And the Hakkinen. It's fast. The Hakkinen is also loud, Okoye warned. Good, Mara said. Let them hear us. Orders went out in a cascade. On the wall, Sol system icons woke like a stirred hive. Docking clamps releasing, reactors spooling, crews sprinting down corridors that smelled of oil and recycled air. A different call came through, civilian oversight, a man in a perfect suit framed by polished wood. Commander Cade, he said, smiling as if they were meeting at a banquet. The Galactic Council has been notified. They advise de-escalation. They're welcome to advise, Mara replied. We're deploying. His smile tightened. Intervention could be interpreted as aggression. Mara looked past him, imagining people crouched under failing shields. Aggression is what you call it when you stop a killer. Noted. The man's eyes flashed. You don't have jurisdiction. We have conscience, Mara said, and cut the link. Cho let out a breath she'd been holding. That'll be on the record. Let it, Mara answered. Records don't bleed. Hours later, fast hours, the kind made of alarms and clipped confirmations, Mara walked the spine of the carrier Hakkinen. Its corridors were narrow, purposeful, painted in old navy grey. Crew moved with efficient urgency, slapping shoulders, checking seals, slotting magazines, loading medical crates beside breaching charges as if the two belonged together. In Hangar 3, a group of Marines stood in a half-circle around a pallet of white-labelled trauma kits. Their sergeant, a bull of a woman named Reyes, watched Tex bolt an autocannon turret into a shuttle bay. Reyes cocked her head at Mara. You sure they asked for this? Mara nodded toward the trauma kits. They asked for that. This comes with it. Reyes grinned without humor. Copy. On the bridge, Mara took her seat and keyed the system-wide channel. All hands, her voice carried through steel and bone. We have a verified distress call. Civilians under fire. Our mission is relief and evacuation. Rules are simple. Protect non-combatants, open corridors, suppress threats. If anyone targets our medics or evac lanes, you end it. Clean. Fast. No trophies. No speeches. A chorus of acknowledgements rolled back. Cho leaned in from the nav pit. Jump corridor plotted. First translation in 14 minutes. Mara's gaze fixed on the starfield beyond the forward glass. Somewhere out there, a world was learning what abandonment felt like. Send one more message to the beacon, she said. Cho complied, voice gentle into the ancient line. Virel, this is Sol. Keep your heads down. We are coming. As the carrier's engines rose into a deep, living hum, Mara watched the formation assemble on sensors. Hospital ships tucked behind armored spines, evac haulers flanked by destroyers, drones swirling like a silver storm. Rescue. Yes. But rescue, Mara thought, had always required teeth. A final incoming ping arrived from the Concordat relay, an anxious Varelian voice translated into shaky formalities. Please, it said, do not provoke them. Any escalation will bring annihilation. Mara answered on an open channel so every bridge could hear. We're not here to provoke, she said. We're here to extract your people. If someone insists on making that impossible, that's their decision today. The jump warning sounded. Space ahead folded, not like a door opening, but like reality deciding to make room. Mara's console flashed a final tag over the operation header. Humanitarian response. Full spectrum. She allowed herself one breath, then said, "Take us in." Virel's night was no longer dark. It pulsed orange where cities smoldered, and the shield dome above the planet stuttered in bruised flashes. In orbit, the last defense frigates drifted in broken lines, their engines coughing like wounded lungs. Lysa Thren stood in the bunker's comm alcove with the beacon cradled against her chest like an egg that might hatch salvation or ruin. Every few minutes the Dominion's guns struck, and the walls shivered as if the world itself wanted to crawl away. On the main holoscreen, the Sable Dominion fleet rotated in perfect predatory order. Their flagship sat at the center, an obsidian spear with flared fins and a spine of weapon ports that glowed faintly, charged, hungry. Admiral Senk's feathers lay flat against his skull. "They're lining up the Severance barrage," he said. "Next wave will cut the shield into pieces." Director Pell turned to the comm officer. "Any word from the humans?" The officer swallowed. "Only that they're inbound." Inbound meant nothing when you were dying by schedule. Above the planet, in the Dominion flagship's command vault, Arch-Executor Kellis Vant watched the same shield flicker and felt nothing but satisfaction. The Virelians had fought longer than expected, which made their collapse more instructive. His aide leaned close, voice smooth. "The beacon transmission repeats. Humanitarian assistance." Kellisoa's mouth curved. What a small word for such a large mistake. "They answered," the aide added carefully. "We intercepted the return signal. A fleet is moving." Kellisoa turned, slow as a guillotine descending. "A fleet?" The aide tapped a projection. A cluster of distant signatures shone like approaching sparks, too far for detail but too heavy to dismiss. Kellisoa's eyes narrowed. "New predators. Good. They will learn what the frontier teaches." He gestured once. "Charge the planet breaker. Let them arrive to silence." Back in the bunker, the next projected strike timer neared zero. Lysa's throat tightened as she watched the shield's health metric fall into the red. Then the tactical map changed. A rip opened in space above the system's outer edge, an impossible fold, like reality being unzipped. Light bent, then snapped straight again. A vast shadow slid into existence. Not one ship. Many. They arrived in formation so precise it looked rehearsed by gods. Massive carrier hulls emerged first, dark and angular, their flanks studded with hangar mouths. Behind them came destroyers in layered screens, then ships with white markings across their bellies, medical hulls, moving in the center like a protected heart. Around everything swarmed drones, glittering by the thousands, a cloud that seemed to breathe. The Virelian bunker fell silent, not from relief but disbelief. "Stars," Pell whispered. Senk stared, feathers lifting in involuntary alarm. "That's not aid. That's a campaign." The comm officer's console pinged, auto-syncing to the human broadcast. It didn't start with a warning or a demand. It started with instructions. A calm voice filled the chamber, translated perfectly. "This is Sol Rescue Command. All Virelian personnel, mark civilian shelters and medical hubs. We are establishing evacuation corridors. Do not fire into marked lanes. Repeat, do not fire into marked lanes." A second voice joined, this one sharper. "Virel defense units, designate friend or foe codes now. We will not guess." Lysa realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky rush and almost laughed, because the humans sounded like they'd arrived late to a meeting, not a massacre. On the Hakanan's bridge, Mara Cade watched the Dominion fleet's geometry with a soldier's disgust. The enemy had arranged themselves like executioners posed for a memorial. Cho's hands moved over the tactical board. "Their main batteries are charged. Shield severance strike predicted in 90 seconds. Mara's jaw tightened. "We don't get 90 seconds. Evac haulers are still translating in," Cho warned. "Medical barges are behind us by 6 light minutes." Mara keyed the fleet channel. "Screen ships, go loud. Drones, deploy. I want lanes cut through their formation now." A chorus of confirmations answered, overlapping and crisp. The human destroyers fanned outward, engines flaring blue-white. Drones poured from carrier bays in endless streams, each a sleek dart with blinking identification beacons. They formed a shifting lattice between the Dominion guns and the planet's shield. Mara opened a direct hail to the Dominion flagship. Arch-Executor Kelesor Vant. This is Commander Mara Cade of the Soul Rescue Armada. You are engaged in active strikes on civilian infrastructure. Stand down. Power down weapons. Hold position. The response arrived immediately, voice cold and amused. Human, Kelesor purred. You cross borders uninvited. You bring warships to deliver bandages. We bring whatever keeps people alive, Mara said. Last warning. Kerr laughed softly. Then watch them die quickly. On Mara's tactical display, Dominion weapon indicators shifted from amber to violent white. They're firing, Cho snapped. A spear of energy leapt from the flagship toward the planet, an orbital cut meant to peel the shield like skin. Mara's voice didn't rise. It dropped. Intercept. A human cruiser slid sideways, engine screaming, and released an expanding field of shimmering distortion. The Dominion beam struck the field and bent, tearing a bright scar through empty space instead of the shield. The bunker shook anyway, secondary tremors, near misses that rattled everyone's teeth. Senk stared at the screen. They caught it. Mara watched the next volley spool up. Disable their batteries. No kills unless necessary. Reyes's voice came over comms from Marine Command. Commander, that's a lot of restraint for a fleet that just got shot at. Not restraint, Mara said. Triage. Human destroyers fired in controlled bursts, blue needles that punched into Dominion turrets, melting emitter arrays with surgical precision. Drones slammed into targeting nodes like furious insects, clamping on and detonating tiny shaped charges that snuffed sensors rather than shredding hull. The Dominion tried to adjust, but every retarget was met by a new web of interference. ECM cutters screamed static into their comms, and their fleet coordination wobbled like a dancer with severed tendons. Kelesor's voice returned, suddenly sharper. You dare. I dare, Mara cut in. Because I'm here. A Dominion cruiser swung toward the planet, ignoring the human screen, and launched a scatter barrage directly into a newly marked evacuation lane. On the Varelian surface, Lysa saw the lane icon light up, a corridor over a coastal city where shuttles had begun to rise, desperately, toward the thin hope of orbit. The incoming salvo glittered like falling stars. No, Lysa breathed. On Mara's board, Cho's hands froze for a fraction. They're targeting the evac route. Mara's eyes hardened. Change of status. She opened the fleet channel, voice steady as stone. Dominion units have fired into civilian corridor. All escorts, neutralize hostile ships threatening evac. Full authority. The reply came back from dozens of ships at once. Copy. Human fire changed character. It wasn't louder. It was final. A volley of hypervelocity slugs crossed the void in a heartbeat. The Dominion cruiser's engines detonated, its spine snapped, and the ship tumbled, powerless, as a follow-up pulse fried its reactors into dormancy. It didn't explode. It simply stopped being a weapon. Shuttles streaked upward through the cleared lane, packed with frightened bodies and the clatter of rushed lives. In the bunker, Pell sagged against the console, eyes shining. They're making space for us. Senk's voice cracked. They're fighting for us. On the Dominion flagship, Kelesor's calm finally fractured. Boarding signals, an aide shouted. Multiple impact trajectories. Mara watched the inbound pods, black needles riding the wake of the drone swarm. Reyes, she said quietly, take their command deck. Secure prisoners. No executions. Reyes answered, grim. Understood. But Commander, you should see what their sensors found. What? Reyes's voice lowered, suddenly raw. They've got chained heat signatures near the reactor doors. Small bodies. Like children. Mara's fingers tightened on the armrest until the material creaked. Her gaze never left the battlefield. Then she spoke, soft enough only Cho heard. Then we save them first. And the rescue armada kept moving inward, like a storm that had learned mercy. The boarding pod hit like a clenched fist. Steel screamed. Magnetic clamps bit. A shaped charge chewed a perfect circle through Dominion armor, and cold vapor spilled into the breach like a ghost leaving a mouth. Sergeant Reyes went through first. Her Marines followed in a silent flood, visors down, weapons angled low, not because the enemy deserved gentleness, but because someone might be behind the wrong door. Their boots found purchase on the Dominion deck plating, slick with frost and soot. The corridor smelled of burnt electronics and something sharper beneath it. Fear, old and fermented. Thermals, Reyes whispered. A Marine flicked his wrist, projecting a red overlay down the hall. A cluster of small heat signatures blinked near the ship's core. Confirmed, he said. They're alive. Reyes swallowed whatever emotion tried to climb her throat. Move. They advanced, cutting through bulkheads with disciplined efficiency, taking Dominion troopers as they came. Stuns, disarms, knees shattered with precise strikes. A few tried to resist. Those learned quickly that humans were not wild. They were organized. At the reactor antechamber, the Marines found the chain. It wasn't metaphorical. It was literal metal links bolted into the deck, running to a row of collars around thin necks. 5 Varelian children sat in silence, their eyes too large, their bodies too still. One clutched a scrap of cloth like a life raft. Another stared at the door as if waiting for it to bite. A Dominion guard stood with a detonator in his palm, trembling less from bravery than from indoctrination. Reyes raised her hand, palm open. Hey, don't. The guard's pupils tightened. Step back. This is doctrine. Reyes let her rifle hang, deliberate, slow. Doctrine doesn't make you less dead when you push that. He barked a laugh that wasn't stable. You won't fire. You said mercy. Reyes's smile was thin as wire. Mercy isn't weakness. It's a choice. I'm choosing you don't touch them. The guard's thumb twitched. A Marine behind Reyes moved like a spring released. One step, a flash of motion, and the guard's wrist bent the wrong way. The detonator clattered harmlessly to the deck. He fell with a wet gasp, staring at his own broken hand in disbelief. Reyes knelt beside the nearest child, voice dropping into something softer than her soldiers ever heard from her. You're safe now. The child didn't move. Reyes unclipped her helmet and set it down so they could see her face. I'm human, she said, as if the word meant a blanket. We came because you asked. The smallest child blinked, slow. We asked. Yes, Reyes replied. And we heard. Outside the Dominion flagship, space was filled with controlled chaos, evac shuttles rising in steady waves, drones weaving temporary shields, human frigates holding position like a wall that breathed. Commander Mara Cade watched it all from the Hackenan's bridge, jaw locked, eyes tracking too many variables at once. Her display showed green corridors opening, amber triage points flashing, red hostile icons shrinking by the second. Cho spoke without looking away from her console. Dominion fleet coordination collapsing. Their screening wing is retreating. Let them, Mara said. No pursuit beyond safe range. We're here for Virel, not trophies. A calm tone sounded. Reyes's feed appeared, shaky from movement, then steadied on 5 faces. Children with smoke in their feathers, staring at the camera like it might burn them too. Package located, Reyes reported. They used them as reactor locks. We're extracting now. Mara's throat tightened. She forced her voice to remain level. Good work. Get them to the Mercer class. Priority 1. Reyes hesitated. Commander. Dominion command deck is 2 corridors up. Kesoa is still broadcasting. Mara's eyes flicked to the tactical map. The flagship remained at the center, wounded but not dead. Bring me his bridge. Reyes nodded once and cut the link. On Virel's surface, Lysa Thren stepped out of the bunker for the first time in days. The air tasted wrong, ash and ozone, but it was air. Above her, the shield dome still flickered, yet it no longer failed in chunks. Human drones had knitted shimmering patches across ruptures, a temporary web catching the planet's pain. She watched evacuation shuttles claw upward in long luminous trails, their engines bright against the night. For the first time, the sky carried movement that wasn't death. Director Pell joined her, eyes wide, voice hoarse. "They are repairing it," he said in disbelief. "In the middle of battle." Lysa held the beacon at her side, its glow steady now like a heartbeat. "I thought they'd send mediators," she murmured. Pell's gaze tracked a human carrier drifting between the Dominion and the planet like a shield made of steel. "Maybe they did," he said. "And their mediators armed." A new broadcast rolled over every channel: Dominion frequency, Varelian emergency band, and open space-wide relay. Kellesoar's voice, vicious and proud. "You violate order," he declared. "You will be judged. The frontier will remember your arrogance." Mara answered immediately, voice carried on the same open air. "This is Commander Mara Cade," she said. "Your judgment doesn't matter. Your weapons do. Power them down." Silence followed, then Kellesoar spoke again, amused through strain. "You claim rescue. Yet you arrive with blades." "We arrived with doctors," Mara replied. "You forced the blades into our hands." On the Dominion bridge, Reyes and her Marines breached through the last door in a storm of foam and smoke. The command vault was larger than a cathedral, filled with dark banners and bone-white displays. Dominion officers turned in shock, hands reaching for sidearms they never got to raise. At the center stood Kellesoar Vant. He was taller than the humans expected, wrapped in ceremonial armor with an executor's crest burning on his chest. He didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He looked at Reyes like she was a glitch in reality. "You are insects with ambition," he said. Reyes pointed her weapon, steady. "Hands where I can see them." Kellesoar's eyes flicked toward the corridor behind her. "You came for your fragile ideals. You cannot carry them home." Reyes stepped closer, the muzzle unwavering. "I'm not here for ideals. I'm here for prisoners." He laughed softly. "Then take me. You will learn that mercy has a price." Reyes answered, "We already paid it. That's why we don't waste it." Kellesoar's wrists were bound in field restraints, his officers disarmed, his bridge secured without slaughter. Humans moved through the space like surgeons cleaning a wound. Efficient, controlled, refusing the infection permission to spread. When Mara received the confirmation, she exhaled through her nose and finally allowed herself a fraction of relief. Then another link opened. Galactic Council Priority Channel. A trio of diplomats appeared on screen, faces tight with outrage masked as composure. "Commander Cade," the lead envoy said. "You have exceeded lawful intervention parameters. You have engaged a sovereign warclade without authorization. This will trigger inquiry and sanctions." Mara stared at them as if they'd spoken the weather. "Do you see the civilians on my screen?" she asked. The envoy's eyes flicked away, then back. "This is regrettable. But treaties." "Treaties didn't stop the bombs," Mara cut in. "They only stopped the help. You risk a broader conflict." Mara leaned forward, voice calm enough to be terrifying. "A broader conflict was already here. You just chose to call it procedure." The diplomats stiffened. Mara continued, "We are evacuating survivors. We are stabilizing their shield. We are leaving medical teams and repair crews behind. You may file whatever paper you need. But if you try to punish the act of saving lives, you'll do it publicly." The envoy's jaw clenched. "You're threatening the council." "No," Mara said. "I'm informing you." She ended the call. Hours later, under a sky still bruised but no longer collapsing, the Mercer-class hospital barge hovered in low orbit like a white moon. Its bays were full of triage beds and quiet voices. Varelians lay under warming blankets while human medics moved between them with practiced speed, speaking in soft tones, letting touch do what language struggled to. Lysa was brought aboard with the beacon, escorted like a relic and a hero at once. She found herself in a corridor where the 5 children sat on a bench, drinking water with shaky hands. Reyes stood nearby, helmet tucked under her arm. One child looked up at Lysa and asked, barely audible, "Are they monsters?" Lysa swallowed. She remembered the fleet arriving like a storm. She remembered the Dominion guns bending away from the planet. She remembered the voice that said enough. A human medic crouched so the child wouldn't have to look up. Her name tag read Parker. She smiled gently. "No, sweetheart," Parker said. "We're the ones who show up." Lysa stared at the medic, then out a porthole where human ships still held their protective ring around Virel like a promise carved into space. She finally understood the mistake they'd made. They hadn't called for diplomacy. They'd called for rescue. And humanity had answered the only way it knew how, by bringing mercy strong enough to win.